Welcome to a new episode from English Plus Podcast. Today's episode is about word power, and we will learn 10 new words in the context of a story about Pecos Bill, an American tall tale. Now, before we start with our story and the 10 words I will help you learn, I am pleased to announce that I have started to add premium miniseries for our patrons on Patreon. So if you would like to get our miniseries, go to our Patreon page. You can find the link in the description of the episode, and you will get access to all the miniseries. The first miniseries is out, and the miniseries has 8 episodes about business English marketing. You will have everything you need to learn about business English marketing in this new premium miniseries. And of course, there is also a booklet where you can get to practice the things you learn in those 8 episodes. And next week, we're going to have a different miniseries. It's going to be 100 events that changed the history of the world. So there are a lot of exciting things coming your way if you become a patron on Patreon. You will support us and you will get a lot of good stuff. And let me tell you regarding this episode that you can find a link in the description of the episode that will take you to EnglishPlusPodcast.com. You will find in the custom post we created for this episode interactive activities and a PDF downloadable worksheet if you would like to practice the things we're going to learn. And now, without further ado, let's start with our story about Pecos Bill, an American tall tale. Some may claim it far-fetched, but it is no exaggeration to say that Pecos Bill pretty much made the West what it is today. Even now, on quiet summer nights, the old-timers like to reminisce about the day Pecos Bill concocted that newfangled gadget called the lasso, or how he taught them to round up cattle for market. Some even claim that he made it rain once. It all started when Bill was just a baby. When settlers moved in just 50 miles away, his pa decided things were getting too crowded. He piled Bill and his 12 brothers and sisters into a wagon and set out for the west. While trying to negotiate a rocky river bed, the wagon hit a huge rock, bouncing Bill out on the ground. Because there were so many children, it was weeks before anyone missed him. All alone on the Texas plains, Bill was raised by coyotes, and he grew up strong and brave. But since he was isolated from people, he thought he was a coyote too. Then one day, a cowboy came along and convinced Bill that he was human. Pecos Bill decided that he would be a cowboy. He resolved to be the best cowboy in the West. While other cowboys rode horses, Bill straddled a mountain lion. He taught men how to use spurs, and he made the first 10-gallon hat. Bill and some other cowboys were out riding one day when a big rattlesnake reared its head in their path. The others ran off in a panic, but not Bill. He jumped from his mountain lion, grabbed the snake by the tail, and whipped it around like a rope. Then he made a loop in one end of the snake and began tossing it over the necks of lizards and other animals. The cowboys were amazed at what they saw. Up until then, they caught their cattle by sneaking up on them and tying their feet together before they could run off. Now they had a lasso. Many cowboys rode wild horses, but Pecos Bill once rode a cyclone. It happened the year when no rain fell. Cattle were dying of thirst. Crops had withered to a brown powder. When a whirling black cloud came spinning toward the parched ground, Bill leaped on it and dug his spurs into its sides until water began pouring down. He rode the cyclone over 3 states, finally falling to the ground in California. The hole he left in the ground is now called Death Valley. So, of course, that is a tall tale, but it is really interesting, to be honest. But now let's start focusing on the 10 words we want to learn from this story about Pecos Bill. Let's start with the very first word, exaggeration. Now we said, but it is no exaggeration to say that Pecos Bill pretty much made the West what it is today. What is the meaning of exaggerate? E-X-A-G-G-E-R-A-T-E. Exaggerate. If you exaggerate, you indicate that something is, for example, worse or more important than it really is, like an overstatement, inflation, emphasis, or excess. So that was our first word. The second word is reminisce, R-E-M-I-N-I-S-C-E. Now, in our story about Pecos Bill, we said that old-timers like to reminisce about the day Pecos Bill concocted that newfangled gadget called the lasso. What is the meaning of reminisce? If you reminisce about something from your past, you write or talk about it often with pleasure. It's like recall or remember, but it happens with pleasure. You remember something that you really like. That is to reminisce. And in the same example, we said concoct. What is the meaning of concoct when we said Bill concocted that newfangled gadget, which is the lasso? Concoct, which is spelled, by the way, Concoct. If you concoct something, especially something unusual, you make it by mixing several things together, like you make up or design or manufacture something from many different things. That is to concoct. Then we have the word negotiate. Now, you might think negotiate, yeah, we know if people negotiate with each other or negotiate an agreement, for example, they talk about a problem, a situation, and they try to solve it. They try to come to an agreement. That's right. That is the meaning of negotiate. That's the most famous meaning of negotiate. But here in this context, negotiate is used in a different meaning. Let's take a look at the context. While trying to negotiate a rocky riverbed, the wagon hit a huge rock. So here, obviously, you're not negotiating like you're talking to the rock, right? If you negotiate an area of land, a place, or an obstacle, you successfully travel across it or around it. That is especially when we talk about roads that are difficult, so you negotiate the road, the rocky path, etc. That is the meaning of negotiate here. And by the way, negotiate is spelled Negotiate. Negotiate. Now let's move to the next word, isolated. Now, because Pecos was left behind, he was isolated from people. He thought he was a coyote too, because as the story goes, he was raised by coyotes. So what is the meaning of isolated here, which is spelled Isolated? Isolated. If you feel isolated, you feel lonely or without friends or help. That is about the feeling. But if you are isolated, you are distant, you are remote, you are alone. That is the meaning of isolated. Now for the next word, convince. Now we said after that, one day a cowboy came along and convinced Bill that he was human. Convinced him. Convince. Convince. If someone or something convinces you of something, they make you believe that it is true or that it exists. So this cowboy convinced Bill that he was human. He was not a coyote. And now for the next word, resolve. Now here, Pecos Bill decided that he would be a cowboy. He liked the idea, and he resolved to be the best cowboy in the West. Now, resolve is Resolve. What does that mean? He resolved to be the best cowboy in the West. If you resolve to do something, you make a firm decision to do it. Like you decide, determine, undertake, make up your mind. But remember, you make a firm decision to do something. That is to resolve. And now the next word is straddle. Straddle. Let's take a look how we used it in the context. We said while other cowboys rode horses, Bill straddled a mountain lion. Wow, Bill was so special. Not a horse for Bill, a mountain lion. But what is the meaning of straddle? If you straddle something, you put or have one leg on either side of it, like when you straddle a horse. But that is when you put one leg on either side. So Bill did not ride a horse, did not straddle a horse, a mountain lion. And now for the next word, rear, Rear. Now here we know when we talk about the rear of something such as a building or vehicle, it's the back part of it. That is the most common meaning of rear, of course. But here we used rear in this context in a different way. We said that one day they were on the road and a rattlesnake, a big rattlesnake, reared its head in their path. What is the meaning of rear? Its head. Now we use that when we talk about a horse, for example. When a horse rears, it moves the front part of its body upwards so that its front legs are high in the air and it is standing on its back legs. Now imagine the same stance but with a rattlesnake. It's like to raise up or to lift, hold up, elevate. That's what happened with the snake. We usually use it with horses, to be honest, but we can use it with other animals as well, like in this example with a snake. And now for the final word for today, that is parched. Parched. That is when Pecos Bill rode a cyclone. But let's take a look at this word in the context. When a whirling black cloud came spinning toward the parched ground, Bill leaped on it and dug his spurs into its side until water began pouring down. But here, we're talking about the parched. And maybe to understand that, I should have read the part before that. Now, before that, we mentioned that year, no rain fell, cattle were dying of thirst, crops had withered to a brown powder, and then this black cloud came spinning toward the parched ground. What is the meaning of parched? If something, especially the ground or a plant, is parched, it is very dry because there has been no rain. That is like saying dried up or withered or scorched. So that being said, these are the 10 words that I wanted to share with you that I hope you add to your active vocabulary bank. And to help you add these words to your active vocabulary bank, I have prepared a PDF downloadable worksheet with exercises you can use to practice the words and remember them over time so that you don't forget soon what you've learned in this episode. And there's also the interactive activities that you can find on our website, EnglishPlusPodcast.com. Take the link that you can find in the description of this episode, go there and practice to your heart's content. Now, before I leave you, I have to remind you again that I have started adding mini-series this week for my patrons on Patreon. We're going to have a new mini-series every week. This week's mini-series is about business English marketing. It contains 8 episodes talking about the 4 Ps, promotion, place, and a lot of other things that you will find very useful for marketing. And of course, there is the practice booklet that you can use to practice the things you learn in the mini-series. Next week, our mini-series is going to be about something else, about history, the 100 events that changed the history of the world. So it's not always just about English. Sometimes it's focused on English, grammar, vocabulary, business English, etc. And other times our mini-series are going to be about cultural stuff, history, science, geography, psychology, etc. So don't miss out on this great chance to get the mini-series. Go to our Patreon page. You can also find the link to our Patreon page in the description. Become a patron of English Plus Podcast, support us, and enjoy our premium weekly mini-series. Now, with that being said, this is your host, Danny. I would like to thank you very much for listening to another episode from English Plus Podcast. I will see you next time.